welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September 2023. I hope you are well. We're using the Tower of the Abyss for you today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is the first link down in the description box. Second link in the description box is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on Circle. You can get access to all of the extended content over there for no extra cost, plus some community specific goodies too. So if that's something that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with that second link. Right, let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Scorpio. Can I have 3 cards for Scorpio, please? Here's the first one. We have Queen of Cups in your recent past. Current energy for Scorpio, please. Oh, goodness. We've got the Page of Pentacles. What's coming towards Scorpio, please, for September? Lord, we have the 5 of Cups and we have the Tower. Don't panic, the 5 of Cups is your card, after all. It feels like there's a bit of a shake-up. I know astrologically there's a bit going on this month anyway. I mean, we have Mercury going into retrograde, which I think is going to mean that we'll have 7 planets in retrograde in total, something like that. And we've also got some North Node action with the with the North and the South Node squaring Uranus, or the other way around, Uranus squaring the North Node. Both nodes, actually. And there's I feel like the Tower is actually Mars, but there's a Uranus-like quality about it, for sure. Apparently we're going to go with the little Centennial Waitsmith from the 10, so let's get that out here. It feels like a shake-up, and a shake-up that is designed to have you focusing on the right thing rather than the wrong thing. And I'm going to leave it as far as that until we get some clarifiers out. So tell me about the Queen of Cups, please. Why are you here for Scorpio? We have the 5 of Swords. And we have the Hierophant, that's Taurus energy. What about Page of Pentacles? 7 of Pentacles. And we've got the Knight of Swords, which is Gemini. Tell me about the 5 of Cups with the Tower. 8 of Cups again, so we've got it here twice. With the 3 of Wands and the Queen of Wands. I don't actually feel bad about this Tower at all. I know it's here. I know we've actually got 2 cards numbered 5 on the table. It's a 2 of Wands at the bottom of the deck. But I don't find it... I'm not feeling anything devastating in this at all. I think there's a lot of ironing out that's going on at the moment. Probably has been going on for a little while for you. But it's reaching its culmination in September. And I feel in a very positive way. So let's have a look. We've got the Queen of Cups here. And the Queen of Cups is Cancer energy. You know, she is the epitome of receptivity, I guess. You know, the feeling that she's the queen of nurturing and compassion, you know, emotional nurturing, compassion. She's an energy that speaks of openness and that forgiving and compassionate energy extended towards self. Now, with that 5 of Swords and the Hierophant there, we can see it being one of 2 ways. Either we have some sort of mental processes from the past, historical ones, that you have recognized and are now finding a new way to deal with. Or else there are transgressions of the past committed against you that you are now forgiving. I mean, you might even be forgiving yourself for some of your historical mistakes. I mean, the Hierophant feels to me very much like the kind of foundational energy that we associate with Taurus and whatnot, but it's got that sense of your heritage, like where you come from, and that isn't necessarily from your parents and stuff like that. I mean, the kind of older experiences that you have had that have shaped you into being who you are. Now, whether it is transgressions against you from somebody else, and that's highly possible. I think part of the Scorpio experience is to experience that double experience, is to have experienced that on a deep and profound level, and usually historically, like when very, very young, such that it would then give you, trust issues and all sorts of things, those things that tend to be the rather lazy trope when people talk about Scorpio. They recognise the symptoms but not the cause of why a Scorpio is the way that they are. It could be that you're finding it in your heart to forgive those people. If you're not forgiving those people, then you're forgiving yourself for being subject to that. And that sounds like a really... When you say it out loud like that, it sounds like a kind of daft position to take. Like, why would you need to forgive yourself when other people have transgressed against you? And I don't know if this is... No, I can think of a couple of other signs that would also take that kind of approach, in so much as they would blame themselves for allowing themselves to be subjected to things. I'm pretty certain Leo would blame themselves. I'm sure like Taurus would blame themselves. Who else? And we'll go with those ones for now. I should have been smarter, or I should have seen that coming, or I should have done any one of a number of things, right, that I didn't do at the time, perhaps because I trusted too much, perhaps because I didn't trust enough. I mean, who knows? It could be any one of a number of ways. But the self-forgiveness would be really, really important there for you as a sign, as it would be for Leo, as it would be for Taurus. Because although it's true that everybody is their own worst critic, I think some signs take it to an epic degree, and Scorpio would be one of those. Now, if it's about old thought patterns that you've had, honestly, now I'm saying that, I don't feel that is the case, because I think you're so far down your own path of healing and recovery. I don't think that you're quite in a space where things that you have thought in the past would bother you to the same extent anymore. When you feel like a bad person because you have those kind of intrusive thoughts about X, Y, and Z, and how you'd like to see somebody actually fall in a hole and things like that, I don't think that's the case. So then we may have forgiving yourself for mistakes that you have made in the past. And I think it's because you're coming to this point of realising that you could not be who you are, and you could not feel as peaceful as generally Scorpio seems to be now without having had those experiences. Whether you've cocked up, whether somebody else cocked up, it's like it's all gravy now. And there's a lot in that. Because this is a position that I think that you have always thought that you couldn't hold. Things hurt too deeply. Things cut too deeply. The wounding penetrates too far. And yet here is where you find yourself. Tell me about this. Healing. I mean, it's been going on for a while, Scorpio, but it's really taken hold now, to the degree that whether or not you are revisiting old narratives and old ways of, revisiting old situations mentally or emotionally, whatever. Like I said, we have 7 planets in retrograde, so the energy does rather lend itself to retrospection. I just don't think that you have it in yourself to be at war with yourself over these things anymore. There's too much peace, there's too much healing, there's too much that's gone under the bridge. And frankly, many is the time that we've talked about the hypervigilance and just how exhausting that is. And there's a preference now for you to invest your energy in those things that bring you joy, the things that actually, amplify your healing, accelerate your healing, rather than holding on to the things that you might have held grudges about in the past, the people that you might have held grudges towards. It's like, don't care anymore. Like, there are more important things for me to put my energy into. And a huge part of that for you is healing. I mean, for some of you, it's really leaning into your spirituality now. Now, the Star card often talks to me about connection. And in fact, I was doing a personal reading for a Scorpio today, and that sense of a connection to the field being more important than ever. Whether it's connection to the field or connection to your higher self, connection to the earth, any one of a number of these things, connection to each other. These things are more important than the narratives that have gone before, the historical narratives. So much energy has gone into washing yourself clean. You're not prepared to allow yourself to get dirty again, doing the same things, feeling the same way, holding the same grudges that you used to before. Now, when we move into your current energy, we have the Page of Pentacles, and I like this very much, not least because it came up for my client earlier. It's an initiation of sorts, right? It's an initiatory energy that can go a number of different ways, can appear a number of different ways. Just a pigeon just sitting on my wall there. The first is, it can be the first steps into doing something new, right? Investing into something new. And what starts as a page will lead ultimately, we hope, through the rest of the court hierarchy to the king. So what starts off small, what is planted as a seed, although strictly the proper seed is the Ace of Pentacles. It's more about the action of planting the seed. I guess that would be the difference between the page and the ace here in this case. We've got something being invested. Now, the other way to look at this is we have something that is being newly discovered. Because I see the Page of Pentacles quite often as referring to understanding for the first time the value in something. Whether it's a value in an idea, Knight of Swords here, value in communication, a value in yourself. That feeling of being able to stand and go, do you know what, I'm valid just because I exist, and that's enough. I don't need to justify my existence to anyone. All those kind of things. All of the things that tend to signpost that we have an increasing amount of self-esteem, and we're increasingly taking up space in the universe like we're supposed to. I mean, whichever way round it is for you here, the Seven of Pentacles is really quite important because it's that taking stock energy. It's the feeling that actually there's something here that you desire to change. Now, you received wisdom here with the Seven of Pentacles, and this chap leaning on his hoe, looking really quite unimpressed at his failing harvest here. Is, do we invest more or do we pull away? Now, whether this is relationships or a work situation, or you take it as it resonates to you, something's showing up as being less than optimal for you. So, do you stick with it and do you put more energy in, or is it time for you to pick yourself up and put your energy in a different direction? I think with the Tower card that is showing up for you for September, it's almost, did I not call a reading that I did for you at some point this year, something about the winds of change blowing in? I feel like I spoke specifically to the idea of the winds of change blowing in. This feels like it's an underlying awareness of a need for change. And perhaps in the here and now, doing something of the act of planting a seed in anticipation of changes that may be required in future. But it's more of a pottering kind of energy than it is cleaning house and, putting a plan in place. Now, this Knight of Swords, which is Gemini energy, obviously rules communication. It's the transmission of information often. So it can be people coming in to tell you a thing. It can be having an idea, literally putting things together. Let's have a look and see why these two cards are here. We have, of course we do, we have the Death card. Now, that is the card of Scorpio. We also have the Six of Wands that is sitting at the bottom of the deck there, in addition to the Eight of Cups and the Two of Wands. Now, I feel like this is something that you've been sitting on. This is something you've been mulling over. This is a direction that you feel like you are being pulled in. But I think that there is something as yet missing from the equation. And it could simply be, Scorpio, that the level of suboptimism, if we can put it like that, has not yet reached a point that is sufficient for you to make those big moves yet. I was talking to my son the other day, and we were talking about something, and I said, you're waiting for crisis. That isn't necessarily a healthy thing, waiting for crisis before you make a decision. And he was like, no, I've been listening to a podcast, and they say that, when everything's really, really good, that's a good place to be. Actually, when everywhere's really, really bad, that's a good place to be, because then you're motivated to make a change. The worst place is to be in the middle, where nothing's too bad, but nothing is too good either. And I was like, I've been telling you that for a decade, child, but no, okay, never mind. It was in the context of there being lots of changes that he needs to make in his life, and particularly around people, and not feeling like he is able to do that because so many people depend on him and they need him and all that kind of thing. And I'm like, when are you going to center yourself, boy? You need to learn to do that. He's on the right road if he's not quite there yet. But I wonder if it's that vague awareness that things perhaps are getting ready to change. You are Scorpio, so you're pretty much psychic anyway, and if anyone can tell when the winds of change are blowing in, it's going to be you. Or whether it's just like a niggle at this point. The fact that we've had the Page of Pentacles first means there has been some sort of movement, there's been some sort of action that you've been taking to put things in place in anticipation of a change. But perhaps some of you are just waiting for news. Perhaps some of you are waiting for the okay before you do a thing. Maybe you're looking for a sign. Now, be careful about that, Scorpio. Because sometimes when we rely on signs and synchronicities, we're actually spiritually bypassing, because, all the things that we need to do, all of the tools that we need to do the things that we need to do are sitting there right in front of us. What we're not feeling is enough discomfort to make the fucking thing happen, But there's the Death card. Like, you can see this lots of ways. We could see it as you not quite being uncomfortable enough yet, certainly paying attention, but not quite uncomfortable enough to do anything. It could be that you're waiting to give yourself permission to go and do the thing. And if you're waiting to give yourself permission, likelihood is that you're waiting for a sign or a synchronicity that you're on the right path. But for some of you, I think it's as simple as recognizing that you have changed. Now, maybe an old version of you was sorry, I'm trying to sift through all of the things that I'm feeling here. So this is quite interesting. Although we don't see any of the cards that indicate it on the table, there's a burgeoning sense of you kind of moving towards an ending, slowly at first, but it's accelerating. Now, I wonder if this is what you're starting to feel, Scorpio. I'm having to be really, really still to kind of put words to what it is that I'm feeling here. There's movement, but it's slow, and there's no idea where it's going. And whether it started to increase or not yet, it will. And maybe you're sensitive to the fact that it will. It seems to me that the piece of the puzzle that is missing is the awareness of how much you have changed. And I think without realizing it, some of you are in default patterns of behavior or default patterns of thinking without even noticing that you're there. Like, for example, I've got some stuff going on in my IRL existence at the moment, right? And how would we put it, right? We've got the detection of a threat because a threat has appeared on the horizon, and then there's evasive maneuvers that we take to avoid that threat, right? So I'm not going to be caught off guard by this, I'm going to be prepared. And I've found that I've slipped into a default pattern of behavior. Briefly, fell into a default pattern of behavior whereby I now interpreted that what was necessary for me was that I needed to work my fingers to the bone, right? Now I'm not scared, exactly, right? I perceive a threat, but I've perceived it a long way off. Whew. I've got plenty of time to put in place what I need to and you know, introduce any evasive maneuvers that are going to be necessary to get out of the way of this absolute clusterfuck that's headed towards me. That's sensible. I've grown. I know that. But I'm doing it by way of a default pattern of behavior. And this is despite everything that I have learned over the last, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. When this particular threat comes along, this is how I respond to it. And I've had to stop and go, hang on, that's how you used to respond to things. Actually, somebody else pointed it out to me. I didn't see it myself. Somebody else pointed it out to me, and I was like, holy shit, you are right. It's almost like you need to catch up with how evolved you actually are here, Scorpio. How powerful you are, how capable of transformation you are, how much you're just fucking winning at life. Now, I'm talking about this in terms of a threat, right? But maybe the threat isn't here, and maybe that's the thing. Something's changing, something's shifting. There isn't a threat that you've perceived yet. You're just keeping an eye on everything. But it's this waiting around that I'm finding really interesting. Because you seem to me to be waiting for the Knight of Swords rather than being the Knight of Swords. Well, being something altogether bigger. I mean, being the Death card. It was even being the Tower card, right? Bringing your transformative energy to this situation. Are you sitting in a holding pattern right now, Scorpio? And if you are, why? What are you waiting for? Some movements happen, but not very much. You're not uncomfortable, but you're getting increasingly that way. What are you waiting for? And I'm asking this question so that you ask yourself what it is that you're waiting for. Because that makes this Five of Cups, Scorpio card, and the Tower card make a great deal more sense to me here now. The energy of the five of any suit within the minor arcana of the tarot is change. We take what has been stable and secure in the 4 right across the board, secure or unsecure, but certainly, solid. And then 5 comes in and it whips things around. It's chaotic, it's changing, it's challenging, right? Now you're feeling this change blowing in on the wind. You're not quite sure what form it's going to take, or you're not quite sure when you're supposed to take this. And this 5 of Cups then actually ends up being something other than... It actually refers to a stasis that is stopping you from moving on. And I do feel like it is because there's something of an old emotional pattern that's playing out here, and it's so low level, Scorpio. I'm not sure you've even spotted it. It's just chuntering away in the background like an old piece of script that has thus far evaded your broom as you've been cleaning out your internal spaces, you know? The Tower suddenly has gone from something that felt vaguely threatening when I pulled all of this out, but then I said, actually, I'm not sure that it is, even with the Five of Cups being next to it. I just can't quite get my head around it being malignant or dreadful or awful. It's a recognition that there's something here that's playing out over and over again that's holding you back. And the question is, what is it and why is it doing that? Like, I feel like the Knight of Swords here is actually about a need to interrogate that feeling rather than wait for some sort of external synchronicity or sign to say, it's okay, Scorpio, you can gallop off in that direction now. And once you see what that is, the Tower's hitting. And the Tower is often given to be one of the, the scary cards of the tarot, and it's understandable. You can see why people do that. It's like paradigm shifting often. It can talk to things that are an energy that is sudden and shocking, that comes in and pulls the rug out from underneath you. But the energy of the Tower is always good. You sometimes have to take a slightly longer term view on it, but it is always good. It puts you somewhere better than where you were before. If you choose to work with the energy of it, if you resist it, speaking as someone who has resisted the Tower at times, it makes things considerably worse before you finally end up having to give up because you're too exhausted to fight anymore. The house always wins, the universe always wins. And then you do the work. But in your case, I actually feel like the big changes here are sitting, waiting for you to tap into them and undertake them yourself, Scorpio. For some reason, there's a holding pattern that's going on. And I'm not sure why you're doing it, but you're keeping yourself stuck. You're keeping yourself still. You're keeping yourself in a state of stasis. I mean, this meaning of the Five of Cups about, like focusing on the wrong thing. The Tower becomes the opportunity to focus on the right thing and then do something about it. We've got double Eight of Cups here. We are emotionally leaving something behind. Well, what are we emotionally leaving behind? Whatever little bit of lost script is just on fucking repeat in the back of your head here somewhere, Scorpio. I feel that almost for certain. We have the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands here. Consecutive cards that speak to the awareness that one is at a crossroads and choosing which way you're going to walk and then actually walking it. These emotional patterns, these repetitions of certain emotional responses that we get into, certain ways of thinking about things. Often they can be really obvious, but sometimes they can be really, really subtle. I mean, sometimes the most transformative power, Tower energies, or even death energies that we can bring in, is to notice the small stuff. I was talking about kind of like the law of diminishing returns. Except it's not really the law of diminishing returns. But it's like, when you start on personal work with yourself, there's all sorts of big bombs that are going off. And you're like, oh, holy shit, I'm like that because of this and this and this, and I'm going to work through this. It's like, for very little effort, you scratch the surface a little bit, and then there's all of these huge epiphanies that come up. And the more you get into the ability to scratch away, at what it is that divides you from you as you are to your shadow, to the dark stuff that's hanging around underneath. We get to a point where we're like, oh, I'm ready to get a spade now, I'm going to start shoveling. Shoveling all this muck off the top of it. But by the time you get down to the level of work that you are at now, which is fine work, Scorpio, is really, really fine work, the thing that underpins it is that it's always more simple than you think it is. And I don't know where this is coming from, but it's really important. Like, this situation is much more simple than you think it is. It's just that there's a little bit of errant conditioning, a little bit of errant Scorpio script running in the background that is stopping you from just making the changes. There's something here that's holding you back. Now, the purpose of September, I feel, not only is to bring the Tower, and that's actually very welcome. That's going to be very, cool for you, because you've been circling this for a little while, at least energetically, if not knowing what it is that you're moving towards. It's actually the Eight of Cups. Leaving this behind and clearing the space, allowing the Tower to clear the space, bringing the Tower to clear the space, possibly, is putting you in an energy of being able to do things, or at least contemplate what it is that you are going to do. Now that you've taken the brakes off, maybe you just need to roll for a little bit, build up a little bit of momentum first, but there's definitely an idea that you need to be moving a little bit faster than you are, and that something's got somewhere the brakes are still on, and you haven't even recognized it, Scorpio, I think. Tell me about these Queen of Wands. Yeah, we've got the Lover's card, which is Gemini, obviously, and we have the Ten of Swords. Did the Ten of Swords not come up for you last month? So here's the thing, Scorpio, right? And I feel like I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs here. What a strange fucking phrase that is. But you have to allow space. You have to let space be created. If you want something other than what you have, you've got to make the space to be able to accept that in. And I say I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs because the Death card literally is all about creating the space. It's about cycles, it's about endings and beginnings and all that kind of thing. But it's about the old out with the old and in with the new kind of energy. Now, if you don't throw out the old, you can't in with the new. It's as simple as that. And when we're coming at things from, psychological perspective, I mean, there's certainly a piece of your mind that you have to let die. I'm not talking about brain tissue, right? But there's a certain way that you approach the world, there's a certain way that you approach life that actually is well past its sell-by date, and you've just got to chuck it in the bin and go, I'm not going to eat that, it's off, put it in the bin. Now I've got some space in my fridge. The Lover's card is about free will. It's about choosing to allow something to end, and something that I feel is way past its sell-by date. The Tower possibly might be coming in to give you a nudge about that. And be like, why the fuck are you holding on to this thing? Whether it's a bit of, the way that you think about things, whether it could be half a dozen other things, right? It's saying let it go. Let it end. Let it die. Create the space. It's the whole point of this reading. It's not about how much space you've got or whatever new thing it is that's coming in. It's like, why are you blocking it? Are you even aware that you're blocking it? Because at this point, I don't think that you are. So whether you are full force bringing the Tower to your own situation, or whether the Tower's giving you a bit of a nudge and going, Scorpio, you forgot the major rule of being a Scorpio, and that is death and rebirth. There's an old bit of something that's, what's that film? Is it Pitch Black? They're all trying to get on the spaceship at the end, and there's those kind of weird little things that keep sticking to the underside of the ship. I might have conflated two different films there altogether, but like the Eight of Cups, Three of Wands, and the Queen of Wands is an energetic release. It's a moving away from something that has been to a contemplation of what things can be, and certainly putting one's energy into affecting what those things can be. You know, we've got thought, we've got action, we've got thought again, we've got thought and action almost here with the Lovers card, and we've got an end to something here. And as I seem to have been saying quite a lot recently, you know, as above, so below, as within, so without, and all that kind of thing. Whatever's kind of not quite right outside of you, it has an originating point inside of you. If you can't quite seem to get something off the crown, you don't quite know what direction you're going in. Oh, I'm not quite sure if I want to do this or not. You know, go within and find this little bit of chaotic code that is keeping you in a holding pattern, and interrogate it, because I do feel like it will collapse under your interrogation, and then you can just sweep it out of the way and it's gone, and it's freeing you up for this big change of direction that the Tower always signifies. This is very interesting. Right, I'm going to leave it here, Scorpio. If you would like to join me for the extended, you're very welcome to do so. You can come over to Vimeo, or you're welcome to come and join us over Circle. The links are in the description box for that. If neither of those apply, it's not your bag, that's absolutely fine. But I would spend a bit of time sitting with self here, because I find all of this really interesting, because it almost seems like it's a necessary precursor to the kind of work that you're doing here, ready to kind of blow this lemonade stand and go off in a different direction. But first you've got to find out how it is that you're holding yourself where you are, at the lemonade stand, if you will. And then you can just go, which strikes me as a very cool thing to be able to do. So, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.